Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. T. Higgins and the entire Cincinnati Bengals offense has really struggled to start the 2023 NFL season, as they just fell to 1-3 against the Titans, and they've had 2 games scoring 3 points this season. So in today's video, we are going to be diving into T. Higgins and his situation in order to determine what's going on with T. Higgins. Week 1 was an absolutely nightmare scenario for T. Higgins and the Bengals, as T. Higgins had a 95% snap count in this game on offense and had 8 targets, yet had 0 catches. He responded the next week up against the Ravens in a significant way, as he caught 8 catches for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. It seems as though that bad performance in week 1 was completely behind him and the Bengals offense as a whole, but this of course did not turn out to be the case, as in week 3 up against the Rams, he only had 2 catches on 8 targets for 21 yards. In week 4 versus the Titans, he did get banged up, but overall he only had 2 catches for 19 yards. I rewatched the Browns and the Ravens game to get a good understanding of what T. Higgins is doing wrong when he's not succeeding and what T. Higgins is doing right when he's having a good game. And first and foremost, guys, it really is the situation. Zach Taylor and the offensive play designers for the Bengals have been coming out with very vanilla, very predictable, boring concepts. They're near last in the NFL for pre-snap motion, and every defense they've played this season have been able to read the plays before they happen like an absolute book. Again, the predictability with the Bengals offense has been very bad this season. And specifically when utilizing T. Higgins is a guy who consistently gets open, not because he's some amazing route runner, but because he's about a league average route runner. But when you use him in different ways, when you use him in the short to intermediate passing game, it really opens up the vertical passing game for T. Higgins, and vice versa. When you keep having him run these long concepts and then hit him with a hitch, hit him with an in, it's going to completely open up the playbook for T. Higgins and Joe Burrow in this entire offense. And in the Ravens game, that's exactly what they did. T. Higgins was consistently on short to intermediate passing routes and did a great job at carving up that zone defense. T. Higgins is a receiver who is clearly better up against zone defenses because it allows him to find that soft spot in the zone. But you watch how he's utilized in the Browns game in week 3 and in week 4 as well. He's simply running go routes almost every other route, it seems. And on these go routes on man-to-man coverage, T. Higgins is typically not getting an insane amount of separation on these routes. Instead, he's winning with his 50-50 ball skills and overall catch in traffic skills. So the scheme really is not helping out T. Higgins. What else? The offensive line has been absolutely atrocious for the Bengals thus far into the season. Even though they have no injuries on the offensive line, they don't have a single offensive lineman that has graded out to an average grade per PFF. And overall, Joe Burrow is running for his life back there. And Joe Burrow is a quarterback who one of his faults is taking way too many sacks, and this is definitely amplified under a bad offensive line. Then you have Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow really has not been playing great this season. It seems as though he's playing injured, and there has been a number of times where him and T. Higgins are straight up just off page on their routes. There was a couple times in that Browns game where the ball was 10, 15 feet away from T. Higgins, not because it was an inaccurate pass, but because T. Higgins was running a route that Joe Burrow did not think he was running. Then some of the blame does have to go to T. Higgins for his lack of separation skills in this season. T. Higgins is below average per PFF this season in graded receivers in terms of separation, whereas Jamar Chase, for example, even though no one's having a good season on this Bengals team, he's still grading out very well per PFF. So again, T. Higgins is somewhat at fault here. And to me, it is his play style. He's kind of that jack of all trade, master of none guy, except when it comes to the 50-50 ball skills, and when those balls are not being delivered on those tight routes 30, 40 yards down the field because of how bad the quarterback is playing and how bad the offensive line has been holding up. Then you have a receiver similar to Kenny Golladay. I hate to say that, but T. Higgins does remind me of a better version of Kenny Golladay in the sense that they do really benefit from having a very prolific top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Not only that, but more importantly, a guy with a very confident processor and a very confident trigger who is willing to throw into extremely tight windows even though his receiver is not open. So my fear long term for T. Higgins is that he gets this insane contract on a team to be the number one receiver. He gets to a situation with a quarterback such as Daniel Jones where the quarterback isn't that good, and then people realize T. Higgins is not this elite route runner. He's not this elite separator, and what is left is a receiver who is out there not catching a lot of passes because his bad quarterback is not confident in throwing in tight windows. I think T. Higgins is going to bounce back, and overall, he looked phenomenal in the Ravens game. In this offensive line for the Bengals, and Joe Burrow needs to start being more confident in T. Higgins and throwing him some more contested catches, and the Bengals coaching staff as a whole needs to start using T. Higgins in more creative ways so he can get open more consistently. But at the end of the day, is T. Higgins some elite receiver who's getting open on all three levels of the field because of his physical talent? Not necessarily. He is a guy who's more or less pretty scheme dependent and pretty dependent on his play of his quarterback. But overall, I don't think T. Higgins is bad. I think he is a perennial 1,000-yard receiver, but realistically, he is a solid number two. He's not this 1B receiver that everyone makes him out to be. He's a guy who significantly benefits from being on a high-octane passing offense. When you take him out of a high-octane passing offense and put him as a number one or even put him as a number two, I doubt that he'd be churning out 1,000-yard seasons like he did earlier on in his career. Overall, though, I still do love T. Higgins, and I still think he hits 1,000 yards this season, and I expect this offense as a whole to bounce back regardless of their early season struggles. Thanks for watching today's video of Mike Talk Sports. Let me know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on the Bengals, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and overall their offensive struggles this season? And do you agree with my take that even though T. Higgins is a very solid receiver and I expect him to bounce back this season, he's not this elite number one receiver that everyone pictures him out to be. Rather, he is a solid number two receiver, one of the best in the league. Again, thanks for watching, guys. Smack that like and hit subscribe if you listened until the end.